Stop scrolling right now because what you are about to hear changes everything you thought you knew about fame, loyalty, and the silent choices made behind closed studio doors. Because Xiao Zhan has just done the unthinkable. He walked away from the biggest opportunity of his career, and the reason is a leaked recording with Shen Yue that was never meant to reach the world. And if you stay until the end, you will uncover the truth behind a decision that could destroy alliances, rewrite reputations, and expose a connection so powerful it shook an entire industry. It all began in a studio that did not exist on any official schedule. No cameras, no press, no announcements. Just silence and intention. The kind of place where decisions are made without witnesses. And that night the atmosphere felt different. Heavy. Charged. Almost like something irreversible was about to happen. Xiao Zhan stood in front of the microphone, headphones resting around his neck, his expression calm, but distant, as if his mind was somewhere far away from the music in front of him. Across the room, Shen Yue sat quietly, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of a notebook, her presence subtle, yet impossible to ignore. They were not supposed to be there together. Not for this. Not for a collaboration that had the power to bridge industries and shake global charts. Because outside that room, negotiations were already in motion. A massive deal with K-pop producers was nearing its final stage. A collaboration that would place Xiao Zhan at the center of a global wave. A moment that could redefine everything. And yet here he was, in a quiet studio, with Shen Yue, recording something no one was meant to hear. The first note played softly, barely audible, but it carried something deeper than sound. Emotion, unfiltered, real. Xiao Zhan closed his eyes as he began to sing, his voice low, controlled, but filled with something that could not be taught or replicated. Shen Yue watched him, not as a fan, not as an outsider, but as someone who understood every layer behind that voice, every hidden meaning, every silent pause. Because this was not just music. This was a conversation, one that had been waiting to happen. And as the recording continued, the air shifted. What started as a simple session turned into something else entirely. Something personal. Something dangerous. "You should not be here," Xiao Zhan said quietly between takes, his voice barely above a whisper. Shen Yue did not look away. "Neither should you." The words hung in the air. Not confrontational. Not emotional. Just honest. And that honesty was what made it powerful. Because they both knew what was at stake. The contracts, the expectations, the carefully constructed paths that had been laid out for them. All of it, balanced on a single moment. And yet neither of them moved to leave. The music resumed. But this time it was different. Deeper. More exposed. As if every note carried a piece of something they had been holding back. Hours passed unnoticed. Until finally the session ended. No applause. No celebration, just silence, the kind that follows something meaningful, something that changes you. Xiao Zhan removed his headphones slowly, placing them down with a precision that suggested he was trying to hold onto control. "This never happened," he said. Shen Yue nodded, but neither of them believed it. Because some moments do not disappear, no matter how much you want them to. Days later, the announcement shook the industry. Xiao Zhan had rejected the K-pop collaboration. No explanation. No statement. Just a decision that left fans confused and insiders scrambling for answers. Speculation exploded. Was it creative differences? Contract disputes? Hidden conflicts? No one knew. Until the leak. It surfaced without warning. A recording. Raw. Unedited. And unmistakably real. The same studio session. The same voices. The same moment they thought was hidden forever. Within minutes it spread. Across platforms, across countries, across fanbases. And with it came the truth. Not the full story, but enough. Enough to raise questions. Enough to shift narratives. Enough to reveal that something far more personal had influenced a decision that should have been purely professional. Fans listened closely, analyzing every word, every tone, every silence. Because in that recording there was something undeniable. Connection. Not scripted, not performed, but real. And that was what made it dangerous. Back in a private room far from the noise, Xiao Zhan sat alone, his phone lighting up, continuously messages, calls, headlines, all demanding answers. He did not respond. Not immediately. Because this was bigger than a statement. This was about choice. The door opened quietly. Shen Yue stepped in, her expression calm, but her eyes searching. "It is everywhere," she said softly. Xiao Zhan nodded without looking up. "I know." Another pause. Heavy but familiar. They had been here before. Not in the same situation, but in the same emotional space, where decisions carried consequences that could not be undone. "You could still take the deal," Shen Yue said carefully. Xiao Zhan finally looked at her. "No." The answer came instantly, without hesitation. And that was when everything became clear. This was not about the leak. Not entirely. This was about what it represented, what it revealed, and what it forced him to confront. "They will not understand," she added. Xiao Zhan's expression softened slightly. "I am not doing this for them." Silence again. But this time it felt different, because now the truth was no longer hidden. It was out, exposed, and irreversible. The world continued to react. Debates, theories, endless speculation. But inside that quiet space, the reality was simple. He had made a choice. Not based on fame, not based on opportunity, but based on something far more difficult. Something real. And that is what made it powerful. Because walking away from success is easy when it means nothing. But walking away when it means everything, that is rare. That is unforgettable. And that is exactly what Xiao Zhan did. So if you think this story is about a leaked recording or a rejected collaboration, you are only seeing the surface. Because the real story is about what happens when truth forces you to choose between the world you built and the connection you cannot ignore. And now the question is not why he walked away, but what comes next. Because when something this powerful is exposed, it does not end quietly. It transforms, it evolves, and it leaves behind a story that refuses to be forgotten. So stay with us, because the next chapter will reveal whether this decision was the beginning of something extraordinary, or the moment everything changed forever. The silence between them did not break immediately. It stretched, heavy, unavoidable, because now the world knew just enough to start asking questions they were never supposed to ask. And for the first time, neither of them had control over the narrative anymore. Xiao Zhan stood up slowly, his movements calm, but his eyes carried something deeper, something final. He walked toward the window, the city lights reflecting faintly against the glass like distant echoes of a life that was already shifting. "This is not going away," Shen Yue said quietly. Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Not fear, but awareness. The kind that comes when you realize a single moment has already changed everything. Xiao Zhan nodded. "I know." Another pause. But this time it felt like a decision was forming inside it. Not rushed, not emotional, but deliberate. "They will want answers," she added. "And they will not stop." He turned to face her fully now. "Then let them ask." The response was simple, but the weight behind it was undeniable. Because this was no longer about protecting an image or managing expectations. This was about standing in the truth even when it came with consequences. Shen Yue looked at him carefully, as if trying to understand just how far he was willing to go.
"You are really choosing this," she said.
Not as a question, but as a realization. Xiao Zhan took a slow breath, then answered, "I am choosing what I cannot pretend does not exist." The words settled into the room like something permanent. And in that moment, the noise outside seemed distant, irrelevant, because inside that space, everything had already shifted. The headlines continued. The theories multiplied. Fans debated endlessly. But none of that reached the quiet clarity that now existed between them, because the truth had already done its work. It had stripped away the distractions, the expectations, the carefully controlled image. And what remained was something raw, something real. Hours later, a single post appeared online. No dramatic announcement, no long explanation, just a message from Xiao Zhan.
Short, direct,
and impossible to ignore. Some decisions are not about opportunity. They are about honesty. Within minutes, it spread everywhere. The reactions were immediate, explosive, divided. Some called it brave. Others called it reckless. But no one called it meaningless. Because everyone could feel it. This was not a calculated move. This was something else entirely. Back in the same quiet room, Shen Yue stared at the message on her screen, her expression unreadable at first. Then slowly something changed. Not shock. Not confusion. But understanding. She looked up at him. You knew this would happen. Xiao Zhan gave a small nod. Yes. And you still did it. Another pause. But this time it was softer. Lighter. As if the weight that had been building all this time had finally found its release. Because the truth once spoken no longer needs to hide. Outside, the world kept spinning. Faster, louder, more chaotic than ever. But inside that moment, something rare had happened. A choice had been made without fear, without compromise, and without turning back. The future was uncertain. Of course it was. Opportunities would shift. Doors would close. Others might open. But none of that mattered as much as what had just been decided. Because sometimes the most powerful move is not stepping forward, but stepping away, and in doing so revealing who you truly are. Xiao Zhan moved closer, stopping just a step away from Shen Yue. No cameras. No audience. No expectations. Just two people standing in the aftermath of a moment that would be talked about long after the noise faded. This changes everything, she said softly. He met her gaze. It already has. And that was the truth. Not the kind that trends for a moment and disappears, but the kind that stays, that reshapes, that leaves a mark on everything that comes after. So, if you came here looking for a simple explanation, you will not find it. Because this story was never simple. It was about choice, about truth, about the courage to walk away when the world expects you to stay. And now the real question is not what he lost, but what he gained. Because sometimes the greatest victory is not the one the world celebrates, but the one you can finally live with. And as the lights of the city continued to glow outside, one thing became clear. This was not the end. It was the beginning of something no one saw coming. Something real. Something undeniable. And something that will never be forgotten.